broadcasting live out of a basement in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core. Steve McCabe is best known as the frontman for Oshkosh-based Redshift Headlights. Prior to that, Steve was in other projects, including Cookie Bug. Congratulations on your decision to become a pilot, and Willis, among others. On March 15th, yesterday, he released his first solo album under the name Bird and Air. I'd like to welcome Steve McCabe from Bird and Air to Fox Cities Core. How you doing, Steve?
Hey, Andy. I'm good. How you doing?
Good.
I guess I asked you that a couple times already before we started filming.
You never know. Things could have changed. So
I want to break the illusion here.
What made you decide to do a solo album?
Well, I don't know if I decided. I started to collect these songs, demos that I presented to Redshift, and some of them didn't land, or we just couldn't figure out a way to arrange them, and so I had these kind of demo sort of beds of songs just collecting, and I had some cell phone recordings of things, and so eventually I started working on them, and some of them were just so different. They were very poppy and not rock, and incorporated electronic drums and stuff like that, things that I tend to be less into. And so I had these songs, and eventually I started kind of tinkering with them and adding parts to them. I built a little home studio, and as I was collecting gear and instruments for that studio, I started adding new tracks to these songs, and eventually it started to seem like it was a thing, like it was a record. And I only had music. I had melodic ideas for a year or two, but I didn't add words to the record until about 2 months ago. I didn't even start writing anything for words, so that came really late. So it was a weird process. And then what resulted was kind of a record that is like a pastiche of those original. There are bits of the cell phone recordings actually on this album. There are bits of those demos, and then I just kind of stacked newer recordings over top. Kind of did the old Beach Boys modular composition stuff, and would pull out a pre-chorus, insert a new pre-chorus, pull out a chorus, rewrite the songs as I went until they seemed like they worked. So that's probably more of an answer than you wanted.
Well, did you keep this under the radar? Did your Redshift Headlight bandmates know that you were working on this?
I don't think so. Not until maybe this last year. I played a couple bits for Jay, and I think I'd mentioned that I was working on something. But yeah, it wasn't super known, I guess.
Was this something that you wanted to do for a while?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was. It was just that I didn't want the song seemed worthwhile, and I didn't want to let them just fade into nothing. So I started to add stuff to them. I also don't know a lot about recording. I'm really learning in the last couple of years how to record, and I'm learning about gear and learning about microphones and preamps and compression, and so. The other part of this was learning how to record some of these instruments and these parts in ways that I wanted to hear them, and so it was a tutorial album in some ways for the budding engineer producer in me, So
yeah, you recorded this whole thing in your home studio.
Yeah,
which I know you've had a home studio for a while, but you recently built a studio, which you call Big Garage Studio.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What drove you to actually create your own studio?
Well, my wife wanted to move into this other house, and the only way she could convince me to do it, she said, "You can use the garage as a studio," and I'm like, oh. So So that really started the whole thing. So
Did you have a lot of the gear for the studio already at that point?
I mean, I had like an '80s or early '90s Soundcraft console. I had some converters. I had a little bit, but not crazy high-end stuff. And so this last 3-4 years has been a process in buying and selling gear to build up the high-end gear that I really want to have in there. And so now I'm pretty happy with everything I have in there. So
I got to see your studio last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't remember, but it was pretty awesome. Like the way that you set it up, it's a cozy studio, and you did stuff that you don't normally see. Like you've got a snake on the ceiling, so the cords don't get tangled up in your feet when you're walking through. And as far as putting together the studio, did that get in the way of you finishing or progressing on your solo album, or did that slow you down at times because maybe needing a piece of equipment that all of a sudden you think, well, I might need this for this song or this portion?
Yeah, I don't know if it like slowed me down in a way. Like I wasn't chomping at the bit to finish this record. I think I needed the time for this record to kind of percolate. So anyway, like the other stuff that I was doing was just kind of like woven into the, shaping the songs and arranging the music and writing new parts and things like that. So yeah, it was all like the composition, performance, and engineering were all like totally like this kind of Gordian knot of some kind of like, creative something. It was really fun. It was a super fun record to make. I'm glad I made it. Now I can't do anything more with it. It's out there, so I just have to like move on to something else, I guess, Well,
we're going to talk a lot about the new album, but let's go back first and cover some ground. You were last here 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you've done some stuff with Redshift since then. But let's go back even further. So in the introduction, we talked about some of the prior bands. Congratulations on your decision to be a pilot, Cookie Bug. You have a style that's, I think, unique in the area. I hear a little bit of it in like Steve Baker and some musicians like that, but you have not a rock background. You came up in a jazz background.
Yeah, I was like a jazz drummer from junior high when I inherited some jazz records from my mom's first husband, who passed away in his 20s. And we kind of I had like these surrogate grandparents who were his parents. And he was a jazz drummer. And he, thanks for motioning me to get closer to the microphone. I'm going to, yep. I'm new to this, I told you. Yeah, I've been playing jazz drums all those years, and I really didn't, I was into heavy metal like in 6th and 7th grade, but after that I was really just into jazz for years and played in symphonies and did kind of like the serious percussionist thing, just worked on reading music and stick technique and things like that. And I didn't get into rock until I got to college, and my roommates were into like the Replacements, and I lived, with people who were in bands like the Lost Toothbrushes and Babelfish and other bands like that. And then that was my entree into that world. And one summer, after a band broke up and I flunked out of college, I decided to pick up a guitar, and so I started writing songs. And so I think I was 21, and that's when I wrote an album that first year, and kind of added drums to it on a little Tascam 4-track, and that was the start of trying to write songs.
You mentioned the Lost Toothbrushes and Babelfish. There was a kind of a reunion show, the Water City Racketfest in Oshkosh. A lot of these bands got together. I know Redshift Headlights played. Mm-hmm. Was the experience of getting some of those bands back together, did that spark any collaboration between some of those band members that you've known for so long? And a lot of them probably weren't playing music still.
Yeah, Kind of like with the Babelfish, we took the old record and I remixed it. We'd done a session before we broke up on the road. We had this whole saga trying to move out to California, and that record never really came out, so I remixed it and we kind of did an online release of that. And then the bass player from Lost Toothbrushes, Eric, and I started after that. Racketfest started kind of a metal project, and so it's just bass and drums. It's super heavy, like huge bass riffy 70s bass riffs, and with tons of like, he runs through like 3 different amps, and it's like super huge, and then the drums are like, I hit very hard as a drummer when I actually play drums, and so it's kind of got that big rock sound. So that's a project that's in the works, that's working kind of at glacial progress, but there have been little collaborations like that. Those are 2 examples.
Justin Mitchell says, nice, you're a jazz drummer. Have you ever thought to play with Mark Martin Crea?
Yeah. Mark and I, as soon as Justin makes one wrong move in Redshift, there's a spot for Mark to pop right in there. I'm hoping. Mark and I have been talking for years about collaborating, and we just haven't made it happen yet. But it's kind of a little inside joke about Mark joining Redshift and Justin kind of. So I lord that over him sometimes.
So the Redshift Headlights, I know, started as a result of you writing songs that were written as solo songs to start out with, and then you ended up putting a band together and starting a traditional band after that. Mm-hmm. This project, Bird and Air, you wrote solo songs with the intention that there were solo songs. Yeah. Is there a possibility that a second band will spring from this, or is there a possibility that Redshift Headlights will absorb the Bird and Air songs at some point?
Both good questions. To the question A, that's a possibility. I think this summer I'm going to do a couple Bird and Air just solo acoustic things, just play the songs like acoustic, with acoustic guitar. I'm going to do something in Madison in May, I believe with Paul Otteson and from Fofon and Laura Schultz from Goodnight Gold Dust are starting. It's kind of this project they're going to play out, and I think I'm an opener for that. So that might be my first Bird and Air live thing. So I might do a couple things like that, but I don't know if it's going to become, if I'll ever do a full band version of this, or if it'll ever become a band. And I don't know that Redshift will ever absorb these songs. Right now, Redshift is in this like really nice space where we're each writing. So for this new album that is coming out this summer, it's all 5 of us wrote, or all 4 of us wrote 2 songs each. Jay wrote 3 songs, right? So I only have 2 songs on the album. I wrote melodies, and we kind of collaborated on pulling parts out, and I wrote a couple choruses for other songs and stuff and plugged them in. But for the most part, that band is a super gelled kind of collaborative thing now. And so to bring in a whole record that I like conceived of and played all the parts on, it just doesn't make any sense with that band. So,
well, and a week ago you were recording some new Redshift Headlights with Steve Albini.
Yep.
Which Redshift Headlights will be back on this show on June 1st. How was the experience recording with Mr. Albini?
It was awesome. He was kind of very Albini-ish, Albini-esque. Just as you would, I think, expect. He was like bristly and businesslike and got his stuff done, and but then at times was personable and nice and seemed to like our music, and we had a rapport with him, and it was good. We'll definitely dive into that, the sort of the details of that down the road. There is some kind of film of the whole thing will eventually come out too, because it was all captured by Colin Crowley from Wisconsin Public Television, and he was awesome hanging out with him all weekend too, and so there were some interesting moments for sure. So stay tuned for that.
And Before the show, you mentioned that Steve Albini commented how polished you guys were going in there to record.
I don't know if he said polished. He said prepared.
Prepared.
He said, in fact, that's probably going to be our blurb for this record is Redshift Headlights, one of the most organized bands in rock. And then with Steve Albini's name at the bottom. So
I thought that was interesting because one of the first live sets that Redshift Headlights did was on 30-Minute Music Hour on PBS, correct?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was like one of our very first shows. So we were pretty raw when we did that.
Well, I rewatched that, and you guys seemed really well prepared for that as well, for being like your first time playing. And there's lots of moving parts on those songs. So
that was very kind of Andy Moore gave us a shot. Originally, he booked me as doing that as a solo, because originally Redshift was like this solo looping project called Attack Octopus, and he booked me on that as that. So, and then I'm like, can I do it with the band? And so then we did that. We were doing a little mini tour that during those couple weeks, and so that was the first show of our little tour, kind of Midwesty tour. We went to like Cleveland and to Minneapolis, and in that loop, and but that was one of the first shows of that sequence. So that was high pressure, high stakes for like a new thing, but it was fun.
I didn't notice any flubs. Were there any inside baseball as far as goof ups or things we might not have seen on the broadcast?
No, I mean, the broadcast, they turn on the cameras. It's like this, like you're on, like it's like you're, Bobby Brady on the Brady Bunch. Like, I don't even know what I'm referring to. But it's like that. And there are no edits, no do-overs or anything. So everything that we did showed up. I was late getting to the stage. Like I was not feeling really well in backstage. So it took me a second. And so the producer had to come grab me and like, we got to go. And so I came out and then we did it. But it was, it went off fine. We played pretty well. And, a couple of the people in the band, I think Dean and Jay, have never looked at it. They just don't have they're like, I don't even want to see that. So they've never even seen it. I think it turned out fine. So,
well, and you had experience playing stressful gigs like that because, and Dean, you guys did the Jimmy Fallon, the last test pilot before Jimmy Fallon's show started.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was like 1999 or 2000, and so we did that, and that was also high pressure and a lot of fun, a super great experience. Also, I remember when we first got there and we got thrown into that swimming pool. They let us into the stage, and the stage manager came up and said, "Can somebody come up and tell our stage hand union crew stagehands where everything should go?" And everybody volunteered me. So I went up to the front of the stage, and all of a sudden, like 10 or 12 or 15 stagehands are coming in with like guitars and amps and the Rhodes piano, and they're like, "Where should this go? Which microphone goes here?" And I'm like, right, that goes there, that goes there. I'm like, holy cow, I'm not prepared. I was not prepared for that, for having any responsibility really as a rube from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And it turned out fine, and it was a great experience. And I think we played okay too for that. But definitely learned some stuff in that process.
Did they give you a copy of that after the fact?
Yeah, so the music director is the manager for the Roots, and he was a super cool guy. I'd come home from school because I was in grad school at the time, and I was like finishing my PhD. I was getting prepared to do my PhD defense, and then I'm every day coming home from UW Milwaukee getting calls from NBC, and it was I forget his name right now, but the manager for the Roots calling me with different details and different questions. And so we developed a rapport over those couple months. And after it was done, he said he'd slip me a secret DVD of the whole show. So I called him after the show happened, and he sent me the whole DVD. So we have the whole show, and we have a secret upload to YouTube the first time or two we put it up under the Jimmy Fallon name, it was removed because Jimmy Fallon's people like search for that stuff and pull it down. But it's still up there under like a weird.
I tried to find it recently and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, if you just search the Willis Oshkosh, it'll pop up on YouTube. So if you search that, that's all you need.
Appreciate the intel.
Yeah. Don't tell us Fallon about this. He's gonna pull it down.
So you might do a solo show under Bird and Air. That would just be you, an acoustic guitar.
Probably.
I don't know what instruments you would use to do that, because you mentioned this album is a lot of layers.
Yeah.
A lot of layers to the onion.
Yeah.
I suppose you would have to kind of pick and choose. Would you do some looping?
I don't think I would. Looping is too stressful for me because I'm not that good a guitar player, and if I mess up one thing, it's a disaster. So I'll probably just slop my way through some acoustic. This is how I'm selling the show. Come on out and see me slop my way through some acoustic performances. But yeah, I'll have to relearn them because I don't even know the parts. Some of these parts I wrote in 5 minutes and recorded them, and I haven't looked at them since. So I'll have to like listen to the tracks and learn them to be able to play some of these. But I think they can all work as acoustic songs. I hope. We'll see.
You started recording the album about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When you started, you have to take that first shovel of dirt. What was the first track that you started?
It was actually the first song, that title song, or the song number one, which is Flash of Something. J title, I can't remember the name. Flash of Something, and I kind of conceived of this as like, I'm like, well, maybe I could write a bunch of like overly catchy pop songs and just see what that's like, right? And so it started off like that. I was thinking I'd just try to write ultra catchy songs, use the demos I have I built up, and try to write super catchy songs. And as I got into it, I don't like catchy songs that much. So I realized, so there's like one or two like pretty catchy songs, and the rest of them, I like songs that like sit with you and are a little uncomfortable and are maybe a little hard, and then require a few listens before they grow on you. And so that's where the record kind of ended up. I think most of the songs kind of are in that space. There's a lot of sonic variation going on because I'm layering all these different parts, and stuff. So, but that was the first song that started things for the record, and I like that song. It's it's catchy, I think, in some ways. So,
and as the process went on, you just kept adding to the project. Did it start out in your mind is this going to be a full-length album, or were you thinking just a couple songs and we'll see where it goes from there?
Yeah, well, along the way, because this is before Redshift had become like as like collaborative a band where everybody was writing stuff, I thought I'm like, well, maybe I'll just work on this and maybe we can make it a record for the band. And then that seemed less possible. So there's like these kind of parallel things happening. But so then I was thinking about doing it as an EP, like you said, and then I just kept working on it. It wasn't until I got to a certain point. I had 10 songs. The last song I ditched because it didn't really fit. And then in late December, I started writing words for this record, and I didn't really know what it was going to be about. The first song already had words, and that's kind of about, it's a weird sort of alternate reality version of meeting my wife. Some facts in it are not at all accurate, and my wife would like us to note, like that to be noted. But it's sort of a fictionalized version of our meeting. It feels to me like it felt meeting her, but the facts are wrong. But to me, it feels like that. So then I started to think, because I tend to put songs into a story, like I like narrative, and it's just a comfort zone for me. And so then I started to write. I'm like, well, let's just write about myself. And so then I started just writing about my life. So the whole album starts with kind of meeting my wife, then us getting married, right? Song 2 is getting married, Crazy Racoons. We had this like experience where we like, it didn't happen on our honeymoon, but we got completely attacked by raccoons in our...
The song it's pretty funny. So that is true.
That's all true, yeah. Yeah.
Can you expand on the story a little bit? So were you camping?
Yeah, we were camping. We always camped up at Madeline Island, and they have like these notoriously vicious raccoons up there. And one night I was like, we were making like steaks or something on the grill, and they were like circling our camp because they knew we were suckers. We didn't know what we were doing, and they were climbing up the trees, and I started like throwing rocks at them and kind of antagonizing them. Apparently that's not a good idea. And so it gets worse and worse, and they're kind of coming closer and closer to our camp, and I shoo them away, and they must have gotten distracted, and they went off into the woods. We had a little pup tent, and we thought, oh, we're going to just put all our food inside that pup tent, and then we'll be in this other tent, and then our food will be fine. Well, in the middle of the night, we realized that was not a good camping practice, and so the raccoons just tore the pup tent apart, and we're just in there. And so I came out of the tent in the middle of the night. This is the middle of the night, and we're in like a walk-in site, and I chased the raccoons out into the woods. Like I'm like screaming and like running with a stick and throwing stuff at them, and I chase them into the woods, and then I realize I'm out in the middle of the woods. I can't see anything, and I hear grrr, and I turn and I bolt back to the camp, and I shout, "Beth, run!" and we run through all the way through the woods to the car. We jump in the car, and we were in the car, and the raccoons come, and they're like clawing on the car, and then we think they're like trying to pull like underneath you. They're like just clawing at it. This is a nightmare. And then we fell asleep in the car. We didn't get up, and we got up in the morning, and everything was decimated. Like all the food was gone. Like the super expensive fish, everything was eaten. So we learned some lessons, but yeah, and in that is really a crystallization of life and maybe marriage and just the fun and excitement of just like being alive. I guess it was memorable.
Well, and you got a song out of it.
Yeah, I mean that's really what the end goal is for anything that we do in life, is to, if you can like mine that for material, then that's what it's all about.
This album is more biographical for you than previous releases. I've asked you before about, what's the song about or this song about? And normally your answer is, well, it's a word salad or whatever. This song seems to have definitely more of a personal vibe to the lyrics. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Flash of Something and Crazy Racoons. What's Bungalo by the Sea about?
That's about contemplating just moving away from the Fox Valley, right? So like there were times in our lives that we thought I was gonna go on the job market and go find someplace else to work, and Beth and I were game for that. And the closer we got to the decision of moving and leaving, the more we realized how awesome this place is, how awesome our friends are, and it just didn't seem like a reasonable sacrifice to make, to give that up for what? I mean, I guess there's the adventure of going somewhere else, but we've had so many friends who have like moved away and tried to go live somewhere else, and then they're like, that sucked. I'm coming back to this area because it's an amazing community, and there are so many people that we've made lifelong friendships with, but there are also like a whole new generation of like musicians and artists doing like amazing stuff that we just admire as old people now, like at least middle-aged, but I think of myself as pretty old. who are doing awesome stuff. And so there's just a really vibrant community. And so that song's about imagining going off and moving to Italy, which is where I always wanted to move, and living on a bungalow by the sea, but and giving up all our friends. And it basically is an absurd proposition, and that's what the song's about, I guess. So.
Justin said maybe it's time to start a camping tips podcast, McCabe.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of ideas. I'm pretty media savvy. I want to spread myself around in lots of different areas. So,
Casey Jones also said that they think you're wearing the same shirt from your Jimmy Fallon debut.
That's true. I am. Yeah. I have two rock and roll shirts, and this is one of them. And so whenever I'm doing anything related to rock and roll, I need to get more of a wardrobe put together.
I like it. Rock and roll wardrobe. So is there a certain kind of style? Is it like a flannel type overlay?
I don't know. No, when I was in Cookie Bug, I had a total rock and roll wardrobe. Like I had a closet of like jumpsuits, because we always used to wear jumpsuits. Like I had an orange and a white jumpsuit, and then I had a lot of cowboy shirts. I don't know. And then I gave them all to Goodwill at some point, and I realized that was a silly. But
somebody else got those and added those to their rock and roll wardrobe.
They may have.
Well, moving along, we've got Sunday Morning is the fourth track. I like that one a lot. You talk about the 1940s marathon on AMC. Mm-hmm. There's also a Barry White homage in there. Mm-hmm. I mean,
yeah.
Any insight on that track?
I don't know if yeah, that song felt like so I had the song and the groove and the vibe and the melody, and then I had the vibraphone solo, and I think it was Mark Miller from Dallas Orbiter in Minneapolis who was here, and I think he was in the studio with Steve Trier. I played a little bit of that, and they're like, "This sounds like Barry White," and I'm like, maybe that's what the song is. Maybe this is like my first hanging out at home and being intimate and just private and fooling around song. So that's kind of what it is, I guess. And it takes place. It reminds me of something that when my wife and I were pretty young, we'd like skip work and like call in sick and just hang out and watch movies and have like a day where we were hungover and just messing around and having fun, right? And so it's a nostalgic song for sure about those kinds of things, which we do far less now as like older people, right? So we've got stuff to do, we got places to be, we got things, responsibilities, and so you can't just call in sick as much. I don't know, do you call in sick?
Never.
Okay, yeah.
After that track, you've got Every Mother's Child, inspired by your son. Mm-hmm. So we're already hitting like a lot of near and dear people to your heart.
Milestone things, yeah. So that, I mean, like everything changed for me. I don't know. I think it changes for everybody who has a kid after that. And so that song's just about seeing the world differently. And, I probably wouldn't give a crap about the world if I didn't have a son because he's awesome. And like, and it makes you think about, how do you make the world better for him, because that's what we think about as parents, right? So.
And is he pretty supportive of your music? Is he a fan?
I don't know if he's he does. He probably is a fan, and that's nice of him and kind of him to to listen to the music. But he listens to he has Spotify, so he has a Spotify playlist I think he put together with some of our songs on it and stuff, and he's got pretty diverse tastes. He likes kind of old stuff, but he also introduces us to brand new stuff. So he's pretty awesome. He actually appeared on almost every album, and it kind of co-produced some tracks on every Redshift record. So even when he was like 4, I had him pressing buttons to like get. When I was recording just random radio static, he was in charge of that, and he would turn the dial and we'd record it. So we've had like fun experimenting with sound and music together over the years here and there. So
That's followed up by Ocean in Your Head, 4-minute track. Mm-hmm. No idea what that one's about.
Yeah, it's kind of about, I guess that one's about like not listening to each other and not, having that kind of empathy for each other, which sometimes as busy parents, we don't listen to our kids enough. As, people in relationships, we don't listen to each other enough. And so we're kind of in our own head. And so the idea is it comes out of most of the story comes out of the mouth of our son who is saying, I'm going to plug my ears and just listen to the ocean. You can hear the ocean in your head if you plug your ears, like our head's a seashell or something like that. And of course, everybody does that. Everybody gets self-absorbed. And so that's the idea of that song, I guess.
I like the line, the three of us tried to catch leprechauns with the Legos.
Which we did. And so this tomorrow, Sunday, is St. Patrick's Day. When our son was really young, he totally believed that we could catch leprechauns. And so we would develop these huge, elaborate traps with with Legos. And he had these marble runs that you could run marbles, and then they'd run into some cards and knock the cards over and then trigger something and then make the trap fall. And so we'd do that every year until he was 6 or 7 or something. Then we kind of stopped doing it. But it was really fun.
Well, leprechauns are mean, aren't they?
I don't know I wish I knew more about leprechauns than that. Why do you say that? Why are they mean?
There's a leprechaun museum. I don't even remember where it was anymore, but there was something there that leprechauns are mean. They're, I don't know the word, mischief. Sort of.
Yeah, that makes sense. And they're out just after the gold, which doesn't. It's not like they're out to help other people. They're not going to go get the gold and distribute it among the less fortunate. It's a kind of a selfish thing. So that makes sense that they're
Lucky Charms. He's always, give me Lucky Charms. He looks like he could be.
Yeah, it's a little bit of offensive stereotype about my people, and anyway.
Birds on Air Over Open Water. It's kind of a similar title to the band name. Mm-hmm. Was that track originally going to be like a title?
No, and that was the last track I wrote. Right? Really, it was this whole song that I thought I wasn't going to make it, and I rewrote the verse. I actually took a verse from one of those songs. I wrote a verse for one of Dean's songs in Redshift. He wasn't into it, so then I'm like, well, cool, I'll use it for this. And then I wrote a chorus for somebody else's song, and it didn't work in Redshift. So then that became the chorus of this song. And then at the last minute, I ended up writing lyrics, and it's really about losing my parents. These last 3 years, I lost both my parents. So it's kind of about that.
8th track, 4th of July. I love this track. Everything's recorded really clean, and then about 2 minutes into it, it's like saturated distortion.
Yeah.
And then they eventually come together, and you get the saturated distortion with the clean instruments, and it's just a really
cool,
really beautiful song, I think.
I'm glad you like it.
And in that, with the distortion, the distortion is so thick and saturated. Was that the decision to do that? I'm sure you went back and forth, or what made you decide to add that in there? Were you kind of playing with different sounds?
Yeah, I had this little magnetone for a while that I ended up having to sell to raise some money for some other stuff. So this little 8-inch speaker magnetone, and I had this high-end fuzz pedal from the 70s. It was ended up being like a $1,500 pedal. It was an amazing pedal. And it just was so crunchy and raw. And I ran that pedal into this little magnetone 8-inch speaker, and it just sounds like it's a beautiful sound. It's super raunchy, and so that sound shaped that song. And then when the chorus kicked in, I ended up adding. So I ended up getting a Marshall's amp and a Vox AC30. I have an 1966 Vox AC30, and I did layer after layer of guitars, just super crunchy guitars for the chorus, so it would be kind of huge-ish. So that was a fun one. That was a guitar kind of feature song for sure. So
then you ended off with Go On. I
yeah.
think trying to figure out what song to end the album with is always, you want to end it with something either with a bang or something that is soft and kind of gives you a farewell. Like what made you decide to end it with Go On?
Well, I didn't have anywhere else to put it on the record, so it kind of stuck it at the end. So I wish I were more thoughtful about it, but the lyrics just kept, that Go On line kept kind of sticking out to me, and so I settled on that as the lyric. As you get old and life goes on, there are these times where or days you feel like I can't do this today, and so that song is more about just kind of the stuff of living and just like recognizing that everything's going to work out, and at least in its own way. And that song was really fun. So that song took a long time to write. There are actually 4 different drum sets on it. And so I actually had 4 different total beats for the whole song. Like 2 years ago, I had one single beat, and then a year later, I added another beat and got rid of that first beat, and then I got rid of that one and wrote a new drum beat and recorded that, and then I got rid of that and wrote a 4th, and then I didn't like any of them, and so then one day I just like randomly pulled all those in together and like started and stopped them at random spots in the song, just like without even thinking about it. Just like, I'm just going to start here, stop there. I'll do drum set 2 here, drum set 4 right there. And I just pieced it together. And so that's how the song kind of ended up. So like 3/4 of a measure will be in the left speaker on one drum set with one kind of beat. And then I'll switch to a total different beat in a different ear. And it kind of works somehow. I don't know. It sounds like it's like intentionally done, but I just like randomized the like distribution of those four drum set beats. That's a little inside baseball there for you too.
You did album listening to party, which was great. Seeing other people in the music scene come and friends and all that, and really nice and hospitable of your wife to allow you to do this.
She's very patient with
me.
But
the music was played on a pretty nice stereo system with speakers that were spaced, and I was able to hear a lot of speaker separation and lots of different, all the little things that you put in there that you wouldn't normally hear. It was like, I think this album, you put in a lot of instruments that are, like we mentioned earlier, layered in there.
Yeah.
But they really add a ton to the songs, and even though you don't think you're hearing it or you don't realize you're hearing it, it's there. Which it's fun. It's definitely overwhelming mixing songs that I layer like that, because it's like 75, 100 tracks sometimes, which is just insane. That's insane. And then I have to like figure out where things. So that's why another reason it's slow, because I'm making these decisions at a glacial speed over those 2 years too, and eventually they just settle into their own thing. But thank you for saying that. Yeah, I hope it doesn't sound too busy and stuff like that. I hope it still gels as the song's arrangements still gel, but there is a lot going on for sure. We're gonna play a question here that we received. You might want to pop the headphones on so you can hear it. And oh boy, I'm not comfortable with this proposition. All right. Well, while I fire that up, if anybody else has a question that they would like to ask, we do have a call-in number. It's 920-358-0795, and it should be in the chat as well. Let's see if I can actually figure this out here. Do you know what the question actually is? Can we preview it and review it before it makes it to air? Oh, you know what? I know what I'm doing here. All right. There we go.
Hi, Steve and Andy. Chuck here. I'm wondering, Steve, if you can talk about the instruments in Bird and Air, and there sure are a lot of them on there. Can you talk about some of the ones that are your favorite? Were they all around your studio? Is there an instrument that you didn't include that you would have liked to have included? Thanks.
All right. Should I take this off? Yeah. Thanks for the question. Man, there are tons of instruments on this record. So like my favorite instruments, I'm most comfortable like as a percussionist. So like the vibraphone, I like that. That makes a few appearances. The Hammond B3 is awesome. So I picked up a Hammond B2 in the 1950s Hammond B2 that was at the Indiana Star Hotel in Indiana, and people like Ray Charles and stuff played it over the years, and I got that for like $500 in Chicago, and then I added the percussion to it to make it a B3, and that turned out, it sounds awesome. It's good. I have it running through a Leslie, sounds super cool. The Mini Moog is also appears on this record. This is 1970s Mini Moog that I collaborated financially with 4 or 5 other people, including Jay and Dean from Redshift, a guy in Nashville, and another person or two. Nate Frank, I think, owns a share of that too. So that's an amazing instrument that it's just full of vibe, and that's on the record. I use that for just bass guitar on some of the songs, or as the bass line for some of the songs. I had all these instruments that kind of came and went as I was buying and selling gear, and so I can't remember all of them. Like I had not a clavinova. I can't even remember all the different instruments I had. I had all these different pianos. I had a 50s Genco Celeste that was owned by the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra that I got out of a barn in Watertown, and it smelled like gasoline. It took me 2 months to get the gasoline smell out. I had to like coat it in like charcoal and just extract the smell of that, and then I got it totally working, sounding great. That appears on a bunch of songs, including the one that you liked that had that bell sound, is the Celeste. And I ended up having to sell it because it was just worth more than I couldn't have. Certain instruments that are so expensive I can't afford to keep. I have to like extract the money from them so I can buy things I definitely need. So that's why that one had to leave. All kinds of different instruments. I think that's a good starting list, hopefully.
The mixer, the board in your studio is in itself like the centerpiece, I think, of your studio now. It was something that you've wanted for a while, and it's probably not going out of there until you move.
Yeah, I'm thinking they'll probably bury me in that, pull the channels out, and just turn that into my coffin or something, because I love that console. Although I have definitely told Gary Bomber that he will inherit it if something happens to me first, because he loves it too. Gary's been amazing in getting that console up and running.
It's a storied console. Can you tell a little bit?
Yeah, it's a Harrison MR2. It was built for Amigo Studios in Hollywood in 1980, and like the entire Diver Down, Van Halen Diver Down record was recorded on it. All the vocals and overdubs for Paul Simon's Graceland were done on it. The entire Paul Simon Graceland HBO special was totally recorded on it. Drums and everything was for that special was recorded on it. They actually re-recorded that from the Africa footage because the audio was really bad on that. Ricky Lee Jones' first 2 records, Madonna, Michael Jackson, all kinds of crazy people have recorded on this console over the last 30 years. It came to me. I got it with a super bargain. I kind of scour the internet for this stuff, and but it was not in fully functioning condition, and so Gary's been really generous with his time and expertise and knowledge and helping just get this working. And he's very careful about not letting me do too much. He lets me do some of the soldering, but if I go too far, he doesn't really trust my knowledge. So he says he'll write, he's like, here's this problem, no touchy. So I have to just wait till Gary can come again before I'm allowed to help do something to.
Oh, your soldering skills have gotten a lot better.
Yeah, I'm not terrible at it. And Gary's like, he's surprised that I'm as good as I am, as quickly as I am. This might be my missed calling. I might be a savant solderer. I don't know where this wellspring of talent comes from in the soldering area, but I've also done some terrible soldering along the way. But
as far as promotion, Steve, I know you like being in front of cameras and you like reaching out and doing interviews. Deciding to do this as a solo project, you're a one-man band. It's all on your shoulders to go out and promote it. Was this your least favorite thing about releasing an album as a solo project?
that's a leading question.
It is. Maybe we're talking. I need to stop leading questions.
I wish I had planned this better and had it like a surrogate me, like kind of go out and like just say they were me or something, or like that would have been really smart.
If you had a twin, you could do that.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. That's a different. You know how to navigate that territory more than I do, but I'm just like like any kind of promotion to me has always been mysterious. I don't really understand how to do that stuff. So and I'm not even that good at making the music, but I try. That's the stuff I'm more comfortable with, and that's where my focus is. And I think that's true, like I said earlier, of like probably most musicians, most people just like to make the thing and to work on the thing, and the collaboration and friendships that come through making music, and the the promotion, with the exception of you, because you're awesome and I've like known you for a long time, and I really admire you, and so this is always like fun to watch. Your show is always fun to watch. We were just talking about the Frank Anderson one was awesome, and you've had so many shows that are super awesome. So this is fun for me because it's you, but generally like any kind of self-promotion is pretty distasteful to me. I mean,
in an age of social media, it's besides doing this kind of stuff, you've got to post. They say post.
Right.
You did a good and entertaining 2-minute plus video yesterday. How hard is it to get out of your comfort zone and do stuff like that? I mean, that's not coming to somewhere like this, but that's doing it in your own studio even.
Right. Yeah. I did that kind of on a whim. I got home from work and I'm like, I should do something. It's like the records. I actually thought the record was coming out today. I've had my dates wrong. So it wasn't until like Thursday that I realized, oh crap, it's coming out on Friday. It's out Friday. So, and it's not out widely yet. So that's whatever the national street date is yesterday at noon. So that's really, you can only get it from bandcamp.com. So birdandair.bandcamp.com. The national streaming date is April 1st. So that's when it's going to be on all streaming platforms. So, but as everybody knows, you don't really, like musicians don't really see any revenue from the streaming stuff. So, if anybody's inclined just at least to do the listening on the Bandcamp, I know it's not as convenient as some of the other streaming platforms, but it's a really artist centric, even still that it's been bought out, but it's still more money goes to the bands than other places. So what was your original question? I totally lost it. If
you like doing the social media stuff. Yeah, I think you answered it pretty well.
Okay. All right.
You mentioned earlier, like the relationships you've made from music.
Yeah.
Are there some bands that are still playing around, or people that you admire musically that you met through playing shows or recording?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, probably too many of them are like people of my age, and there's a much healthier, awesome, younger, cooler sort of generation of, folks. For sure, anything that the Crutch and Memory folks do is always awesome. So Dusk and the Julia Blair and the any of the Amos Pitch sort of solo projects, I always get those. Present Age, and there's a bunch of bands. I'm dropping names right now, but there are just tons of bands that are younger that are like doing cool stuff like that. the kind of stuff that I think when we were like that age, we were like kind of vibrant and interested and interesting. And I love that stuff is happening. I remember being like 22 and 23, and I would like, if a band that was like made up of 30-year-olds was playing, I would never want to even be close, like I'd never hang out with any of the bands that were, with the exception of like Rebel Waltz and the Twisted Egyptian, Steve Trier band, a couple bands like that. But otherwise, there's just super exciting stuff that I'm not even totally hip to, that's going on in the, in that age group. And so, I'm excited to see what comes of all that for those folks. And the Traveling Suitcase are heroes of mine, and Horace Green, and out in Mankato, Goodnight Gold Dust, and Silver Summer, and some of those bands. Dallas Orbiter, Minneapolis has a new record coming out. They're our age, but it's an amazing record, and that's coming out on vinyl. So there are tons of bands that I just like love and admire, and they're like great friends, and it's a good life, and it's been a good life, and those friendships are like the core of it.
You mentioned the present age, who was on a show called Oshkosh Rocks, which your bandmate Dean was involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen Oshkosh Rocks, you've got to check it out on YouTube. They have a whole series of videos up with the present age, which is a younger up-and-coming band with a great indie rock sound. Yeah. I think they've got some more coming up with, I don't want to jump the gun.
I think he's mixing Shuby right now,
yep.
So I think the next one is Shuby, and that's another band I meant to mention too. Those guys are awesome, even though I haven't seen them in about a year. But yeah, those guys are spectacular. So.
And a shout out to Ian Moore, who just commented, said he's enjoying the stories from the McCabe past, and
Thanks,
mentions says just lucky and blessed to be have the area towering with talent. And I'm just paraphrasing here, but mentions Walt Hamburger, Crutch of Memory, The Train Station, Pat McDonald, Rodney Zimmerman, Jay Stulu, Jason Gossel, Ben Grooven, and Redshift Headlights, and Nicholas Raymond. So I mean, yeah, there's just a ton of talent.
All
in this
those
area.
people for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and Ian too. Ian's awesome. So yeah, cool.
So you've recorded with a lot of people as well, like engineers. You've Jay Listen. I might say this right. Lyson. Yeah, he runs Pixel Pro Audio. That's his on
business.
College Avenue.
Yeah, on College Ave. Yeah.
And Mark Goldie, of course, Jeff Verner from Rebel Waltz, yep. And Steve Albini now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ever going to record, now that you've got your studio set up, are you going to keep on recording with other engineers, or are you going to pivot to start doing it all yourself?
I like putting it in the hands of others, but part of the reason we did the Albini thing is because both my studio and my console was not up and running, and Dean's studio is going through renovation at the salon. So this seemed like a good way to do it, and then to also like check off a bucket list item and learn from a master, engineer. I don't. It's cost prohibitive for us to probably record with big people too often ever again. So I don't know that we might, but I don't know that we'll see how it goes. I shouldn't say one thing or another about that, but I love making stuff ourselves. So.
If somebody approached you and said, "Can you explain Bird and Air?" How would you explain Bird and Air?
The record or the band?
The band and the record.
Well,
you're the band, so
I'm the band, so that's self-explanatory.
You've got the one record out, so it would be.
How would I explain it? I don't know. It's an experimental indie pop record, right? I guess, and it's autobiographical and imaginative, and it's catchy and ugly, and it's not too long, so it's like it's shorter. So that's good. That's a good thing. It's a shorter record. It's like 36 minutes. So, and I know nobody makes records anymore, but I like a full length record, so it's kind of a full length record.
You did one video for this so far. There's been one full-length video released.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about how that video came together? Who helped? I know you had some bandmates helping you with it.
Yeah, Jay Spanbauer pretty much directed the whole thing. I had kind of the core idea, just like, let's like film a couple people at the Reptile Palace and like two young people, like and I was kind of open for anybody. I was up for like two women or two guys or, trans folks or anything. It was, I didn't really have specifics, but the people who were accessible were Jeremy Wood's son Ephraim Wood, who I recorded his new record for, and he was up for doing it, and then Justin Mitchell's daughter Annabelle. And so we filmed just a quick little, we kind of like busted in on a metal show there one Saturday and shot some quick footage. Dean shot the footage, and then Jay strung together the rest of the video with shooting me, and then a bunch. He's on the road a lot. He travels out west a lot, and then he just kind of spliced a bunch of his road videos in there and called it a video. It turned out really cool. It has like we didn't want it to be too narrative. We wanted it to be more visual and like jump around and just not be too purposeful. And so I liked the kind of the random images that kind of come and go in the way he laid it out. It turned out pretty cool.
Question for the layering part of recording that album. Was there a situation you ran into during the recording of any of the songs where you added too many layers and you were unable to remove something without making something else sound weird?
Probably. That did probably happen. I can't think of a specific instance, but that seems like a reasonable sequence of events that may have occurred. People haven't checked out the record yet, or even if you have, I'd suggest listening to it with a pair of earphones on. Okay.
Because you get the separation. This doesn't tie in with the question, but
right.
You are doing lots of layers. Like I mentioned during the listening session, there's lots of staccato kind of guitar parts, mm-hmm. and they kind of come and go. And mm-hmm. I just think when you've got over 100 tracks, in some instance, there'd be a point where you'd want to remove something, but then it would make something else sound different because they're building on top of each other. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even though I have 100 tracks, like that doesn't mean they're all going at the same time too. So, because I kind of really slowly started to figure out the record and what it, like a given song sounded like, I mean, it was pretty much mixed 6 months ago. Like I haven't made that many changes because I gradually was piecing things together and making choices along the way. And so even when I mixed it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I mixed the record like in a week. I didn't do much. Like it was kind of all the big decisions had been made. I did some leveling of certain things, but otherwise I pretty much left it. So
you mastered it yourself too, didn't you?
Yeah, and then I mastered it. So I mean, just there's software for that. So I didn't do what Justin Perkins does. And if I had a budget for this, I would have definitely gone through Justin Perkins. Someday I might remix it through my Harrison and then send it to Justin Perkins for a proper mastering. But that's a total specialized art that I don't have any knowledge, really real knowledge about. And so I did master it. I ran it through some mastering software, but I did not really make choices. I ran it through the software and I'm like, sounds okay. Let's put it out. So I wish there were more craft involved in that than that, but that's what happened.
What's your favorite track on the album?
Oh, I mean, some of them are really emotional. I can't really even listen to them. My favorite track. I mean, I really like the last one. Go On. I think that's there's something about it. It ended up being cool, even though I have a love-hate relationship with that one. Maybe it might be Crazy Racoons is the most listenable for me. That's probably I'd say that's my favorite right now. So,
how are you feeling at the album listening release show at your house while a group of friends and peers were around listening to this album for the first time?
Yeah, that felt like this. Like it was really awesome to have a party. That was the fun part. But the listening part was uncomfortable for me.
You were kind of tucked back.
Yeah.
A couple rooms away.
Yeah. I wasn't in the center of it. So, but I mean, I saw people tapping their toes, so that's good. And people said nice things. And then we had a great party, and it went too late. And then the next day I was a mess. So,
well, this album is great. People should go check it out. It's up on Bandcamp right now, and as you mentioned, it'll be on all the streaming services April 1st. You can purchase it right now, which is probably the best way to do it. You're not going to release this on vinyl or CD or anything at this point?
No, I mean I might do a CD physical release this spring at some point, but that's only if I'm doing shows. So we'll see what happens, but I think this will probably be the way I release it, is just on Bandcamp, and then on April 1st the streaming.
And then of course you mentioned you're going to be performing it possibly once, maybe more.
Yeah, in Madison.
Nothing up here in the Fox Cities.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
You got an opening slot for any of your shows coming up?
Eventually.
All right.
Actually, maybe we do.
All right.
You put the idea in my head, Steve. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Any last
networking?
Any last words or anything that you want to say before we end the show?
No, I mean, thanks for your time. I mean, it's always a pleasure just to hang out with you. And unfortunately, there were these cameras and microphones that got in the way of it, and these fairly rude questions from particularly Justin Mitchell. But other than that, this was delightful, and I'm grateful for anybody who listens to the record and picks it up if they're inclined.